Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hey Shady Lady, and today I have a different video than I normally put up on this channel, but I'm hoping that this might become some of my normal content going forward. Today I'm going to be showing all of my tarot and oracle decks. I have 43 total, not including 3 or 4 that I've given away to friends throughout the years. So I'm just going to do a brief flip through of each of the decks and kind of show what they look like. I'm not going to go deep into any of them, but if there's some of the decks in particular you want to see more on, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do a full video review of that deck. Today's video has a very fun sponsor. I'm super excited to share with y'all Happy and Polly. They were kind enough to gift me this cat tower that I have behind me for sweet little Toasty to play on. Happy and Polly is one of the cutest pet accessory websites I've ever seen. They have all kinds of things for cats and dogs, including accessories and actual functional tools like feeders, dog beds, cat beds. Some of my favorite things on this website, I love their entire Dreamland line, which is the cat tower that I ended up getting. They also have some very cute scratchers that look like mushrooms. They have cute fountain water bowls for your cat so that they have fresh running water. Some of the litter boxes are absolutely adorable. I really kind of want the UFO litter box eventually, and there's definitely a couple of the litter mats that I'm eyeballing. Y'all know I've been loving all my peach stuff lately, so this cute peach litter mat is everything. And if you happen to find anything on the website that you like, Happy and Polly was kind enough to give me a code for you. So if you use Shady at checkout, you'll save 10% on your order, and I'll have a link in the description box below to their website. Toasty loves her cat tree. She sleeps up here all the time now, and it is the perfect height next to the window for her to get a good vantage point and watch the little birdies and chipmunks that like to play outside of the window. Thank you again so much to Happy and Polly for sponsoring today's video and letting me bring y'all some new content that's not just Twitch tutorial focused. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into this video. I'm going to be showing all 43 tarot and oracle decks that I have, and I will include links in the description box below. If y'all have any questions about how I got into tarot or things like that, let me know in the comments below and I'll make future videos on the subject. I have been practicing tarot since around 2012, so it's been about 10 years, and I am a part-time tarot reader on Twitch occasionally. It's more of a hobby for me at this point. I have gone through phases where it was my main career, so to speak, but now it's mostly a hobby, and I love collecting things. So my tarot collection is growing slowly but surely, and yeah, I'm happy to share it with y'all. So to get started, I'm going to show you all of my tarot decks in one spot on my bed. This isn't the most high quality footage ever, but I wanted to try to give you a perspective of how many decks there are and what they look like next to each other, and with Toasty, of course. First up is actually one of my newest tarot decks, the Final Rose Tarot. I got this from Etsy just a couple of weeks ago, and it is the most dramatic tarot deck ever, according to the artist. The whole premise of the deck is based around the show The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, so there's a lot of cards that reflect reality TV and archetypes based around that, which I think is a very fun concept, especially as a streamer who does tarot. I think it matches really well with the overall audience. I love the Aphrodite vibes with the red to pink ombre and the gold foil accents. I think this deck is beautiful, it's aesthetic, and it's overall very femme and fierce at the same time, and probably one of the more unique tarot decks that I have. Next up is the Beautiful Creatures Tarot, and this has actually been gifted to me twice by 2 different people, so something about this artwork must scream it's my aesthetic. I absolutely love the art though, so good on y'all. You nailed it. This is my aesthetic. It's got like Precious Moments vibes with these big baby doll eyes, and the cardstock is great. There's a purple holographic on the edges. One of the main things I love about this deck is the keyword at the bottom of each card kind of gives you a jumping point on where to focus. There's definitely a gothic feel to this, very like sweet baby angel gothic era. I will say my one negative for this deck is it's not great for intuitive tarot readers because a lot of it is just kind of pretty aesthetic. The keyword at the bottom actually is very helpful for new tarot readers. Next up, we have one of my favorite tarot decks of all time called the Everyday Witch. This was my main tarot deck for quite a long time. It's got a witchy theme to it, so a lot of the characters in it have tall witches' hats. It's basically a reimagined or revisited Rider-Waite-Smith with its own take on some of the different imagery. It follows a witch aesthetic, so in every card there's actually a familiar, a cat character that follows along, and I think it's interesting to see how that cat changes from card to card and matches the kind of energy. Beautiful, vibrant colors and excellent intuitive imagery. Great beginner deck. Next is the Cosmic Tarot, which was actually the first tarot deck I ever bought for myself. So I've had this deck almost 10 years. I was drawn immediately to the beautiful artwork in it, incredible gradient colors with very striking faces of humans. I'm very drawn to the human expression, and some of the characters in this just spoke to me. I used this deck for years before I finally got myself some new ones. It's excellent for intuitive readers or beginner readers. Also follows along with Rider-Waite-Smith pretty well, so it's also pretty easy to find meanings for online if you're trying to find help interpreting it. Next is Mystic Monday's Tarot. I bought this for myself a couple years ago, so it's fairly new to my collection. I was drawn to the abstract, colorful artwork of it. It has a holographic edge as well. It's got a minimalist abstract feeling and with beautiful, vibrant colors. I love the ombre gradients, of course, you know me. The abstract nature of it does make it a little difficult to read with as intuitively, but if you already have a pretty strong grasp of the card meanings, then this is a great deck. Next, I have a redrawn Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I don't know the official title of this deck, but it is just the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, but it's been updated with colors and like the line work is redone. So it's just crisper, updated artwork. This is an excellent standard tarot deck to have. I really love to have a good Rider-Waite-Smith in my repertoire because you can't go wrong with the basics. I do wish the back was a little more exciting, but that's okay. Next is the L Tarot deck, which was actually a gift from a friend. It's a lotería art style. This is a really interesting tarot deck, and the book is actually pretty cool. I love books that include an upright and reversal meaning that are pretty straight, simple, to the point. What's interesting about this deck is it's very modernized. So there's like VR and Bitcoin and stuff. I'm not a Bitcoin person at all, so that's why I don't use this deck, but I will say it's an interesting take, and the lotería art style is beautiful and charming. The colors are crisp and clear on this. It's also a pip deck, which I don't love. I'm an intuitive reader, so I like the imagery of the cards, but I'm grateful for the gift, so thank you, friend. Next, we have the Light Seer's Tarot. This is actually one of my main tarot decks that I use now. I don't think I've ever been this drawn to artwork in tarot decks, and this was actually the first deck I ever got where I was able to pull a court card and go, I know what this means, or I feel what this means. It's just gorgeous. Look at this devil, oh my god. It's gorgeous, gorgeous colors, beautiful people with amazing symbolism and energy in the imagery. I highly recommend this deck. It also has a good level of diversity, which is something I really value in decks. And here we have a bit of a meme, a little laugh, a little chuckle, a tiny tarot even. I got this a long time ago. I found it at a tarot shop and I was just like, have to have it. I never use this for readings. Although what I think would be cool is to carry it around in a little pouch on like your belt, and you just reach in and pull a little card out for someone and hand it to them. I thought that would be really cute. Or I thought I could cover these in resin and make tarot jewelry. I find this charming and adorable. It's impossible to hold. Definitely not easy to shuffle or anything like that. A fun little guy to have in my collection of tarot decks for sure. Next up, we have the Hermetic Tarot, kind of a must-have for esoteric tarot readers. I don't use this deck often. It is incredibly intimidating, not beginner-friendly, overwhelming imagery and symbolism. It's a full black and white deck, very deeply entwined with astrology and esoterica in general. Really cool deck to have in my collection. Amazing study tool. I love just using this as a jumping point for, let's learn this symbol, let's figure out what this character is. Next up is the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight, which is actually a deck I bought for myself after my first breakup back in 2016. Got dumped, had to get my emo deck. I always describe this as Tim Burton meets Salvador Dali. It's very high contrast, beautiful, bold colors with kind of a surrealist taste to the characters. It's pretty good for intuitive readers. It gets a little abstract sometimes to the point where it's like, what is this even saying? But I do think it has a really strong voice. It's definitely a sad deck though. Here's one of the newest decks that I've got called the Alleyman's Tarot. This was actually a Kickstarter that I supported around the pandemic. And this is such a freaking cool deck. The deck is over 100 cards or so. There's like 13 different death cards. Several of the major arcana show up multiple times, and every single card is drawn by a different artist. This is such an interesting concept for a deck. Obviously, too many cards to shuffle at one time, so you have to take a more creative approach to shuffling it, but you never get the same reading twice with this. It is a little overwhelming, I will say, because there's just so much happening with it, and it kind of stresses me out out sometimes to read with it, but this deck gives some pretty interesting readings and definitely not an experience you get with any other tarot deck I've ever had. This deck looks very mysterious in its white box. This was another gift from one of my mods on Twitch. Thanks, Reaper. It's from an artist on Etsy, and every single card is a different cryptid. So it's kind of a creepy, spooky, scary monster deck, but the art is adorable. Even though they're creepy cryptids and scary creatures, it's a very soft and adorable art style. The booklet that it comes with just simply tells you which cryptid is featured on the card. I would say for beginner readers and intuitive readers, it's not a great go-to, but this is definitely a novelty deck and really fun to have in my collection. This deck I just got this week. It's called Accurate AF Tarot, and I really wish that they could have had a more creative title than that, because the deck is so much more gorgeous than that phrase. No offense, I'm sorry. But the deck is gorgeous. It's my first ever circle deck. I've always wanted to have a circle shaped deck. The edges are holographic gold. I'm loving the pastel gradient. The art style's gorgeous. It's got kind of a scrapbook feel to it. Very dreamy and ethereal. Another deck that has keywords on the cards, which is great. You don't always have to have the book right with you. Next is for our pagan friends, the Ostara Tarot. And Ostara is our springtime seasonal. This is a really interesting deck. The artwork on all of the cards are by 4 different artists that collaborated together to create this. And of course, we have our beautiful silver edges on the deck. You know, I love a good holographic edge. The cardstock is excellent because even though it's holographic edged, it's pretty easy to shuffle still. And the artwork in this is all incredibly magical feeling, and it features a lot of nature and animals, and overall feels like very mystical, like you've gotten lost in the woods and little forest witch is coming to provide you some insight. Now, this is another kind of meme purchase of mine, but I couldn't resist. I saw this on Amazon one day and I was like, all right, I gotta see the Miss Cleo's tarot deck. And honestly, it's pretty interesting. It's got this Egyptian feel throughout all of the cards. And I actually think some of the imagery on the cards are very stark and easy to just intuitively understand right off the bat. So it was a meme purchase, but pretty cool deck to have in my collection. Here is actually the original box for the first tarot deck I ever got, Waite-Smith, but inside it's a joke. I actually had to put a different deck in here, the Mystical Cats Tarot. I lost the box for it. And this is a tarot deck I've had since around 2013, 2014, one of my oldest decks and one of my favorites. Every card features a cat, but even though it sounds like it would be silly and not very meaningful, the imagery is so stark and solid. It's very emotive, and you wouldn't necessarily expect that from a deck that's all cats. But I love having this as a go-to. The imagery never fails me, and I know exactly what it's communicating to me. Here we have another very esoteric style deck, the Starman Tarot. This deck was actually made by an artist who created a lot of artwork for David Bowie, and he created this entire deck around the concept of David Bowie, the Starman, Iggy Stardust. But the cards are really tall, so they're a little difficult to do bridge shuffling with. You can see here the artwork on this is overwhelming, intimidating, esoteric, so many things hidden in the corners, but this is a really powerful deck. And actually the book has some of the most in-depth, detailed meanings and deep explanations of the meanings for the cards that I've ever had. I don't use this often, but it is a very powerful, cool deck. Next is the Kawaii Tarot, which again was just, I saw it needed to be in my collection. This book is one that I use constantly. This is always sitting on my desk when I'm doing tarot readings, whether I'm using the Kawaii Tarot deck or not. It is a very cute deck. It is a pip deck, so not good for beginners, but definitely kawaii and adorable, would make some cute Instagram pictures, you know. But with the book paired with it, you're going to get good meanings out of it. But if you don't have the book ready to go and you're a beginner reader, this isn't a great deck at all. And I rarely use the Kawaii Tarot to read with, but the book, if I ever lost the book, I would buy the deck again just to have the book. Here we have the Illuminated Tarot, and I actually thought I would like this deck more than I did, but when I received it, I realized that it does not have major arcana. It is only the minor arcana. So it's essentially a playing card deck which is pretty cool. It's got the feel of a traditional playing card deck, Jack of Hearts and Queen of Diamonds. It has a lot of animals in it, very funky psychedelic colors on it, which I found really cool. Some of the imagery on it is pretty good, even though it kind of looks minimalist and pippish in some ways. Definitely an interesting deck. I just wish it had major arcana included. I know there's some tarot decks that are only major arcana, so maybe you could use those with each other. Next, we have the förhäxa tarot, and this is another recent purchase of mine. That aesthetic screams at me. It is really gorgeous and has its own kind of deep fairy lore to it. So once you start to read all of the different cards and go into the book, you see that there's a lore continuing through some of the characters that pop up in the different cards. The artist of this deck has given their own storyline to some of the characters that show up. This would be great for people who are into fairycore or fairies in general, and nymphs and forest spirits. And I think it was this Eight of Air that I saw online first that made me want to buy the deck, because my gosh. Next is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck I got last year to have basically an aesthetic version of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I really wanted a borderless version of the Rider-Waite-Smith. I specifically wanted this for my Midnight Study Sesh series, which is a deep dive into the esoteric symbolism of the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot specifically, and I wanted some nice muted color tones of the Rider-Waite-Smith and a borderless version for pictures for my blog series. Next, we have another one of my current favorites. This is the Modern Witch Tarot. If you're someone who really enjoys the Rider-Waite-Smith but doesn't like the lack of diversity in the deck or the overwhelming machismo, the Modern Witch Tarot is perfect for you. It's highly diverse and it's more femme-focused, and it also has a modern touch to it, so you'll see things like laptops and cell phones, skyscrapers and cars, which I actually think sheds a lot of light on how we can understand the meanings of the cards in the modern day. I also love the contrast of the colors that are used in this, the mustards. It's got a very 1970s hippie color palette vibe, which I just think is gorgeous. This is definitely a fan favorite on my streams, and it's of course got the witchy aesthetic, long stiletto nails showing up often. I highly recommend this deck. And another thing that's great about this is the artist, Lisa Sturl, actually has a journal that accompanies this, the Modern Witch Tarot Journal. And inside of this, there's your own spaces to write the meanings for cards. It has a lot of guided areas. You can write down tarot readings you've done with interpretations, almost like a dream journal. The book is not used yet because I always am scared to ruin new journals. So now we're switching over to my oracle decks. So this is the Gratitude Oracle, which was also a gift, and I'm really grateful to have received it. It has different cards in it that are inspiration, affirmation, and reflection. And so these are really good to kind of draw first thing in the morning and give you a meditative prompt for the day, help you focus a little more on gratitude and positive affirmations, and give you a nice focus for your mind. These are great mental framework cards to have. Next is one of the first oracle decks I bought for myself. I actually thought this would be one of my favorites forever. The art style is to die for. It is pastel scrapbook feeling. It's got a big focus on like new age symbolism, so there's a lot of like Akashic records and, you know, multi-dimensional kind of things, but it does definitely have a little bit of a Christian undertone because there's like Mother Mary cards. So I want to give a little bit of warning with this deck that it does kind of come with that, just in case that's not your cup of tea. I don't use this deck very often anymore, mostly because of that, and I find it a little divisive in my stream readings. The artwork speaks for itself though. This has the name of the card and then a short sentence summarizing the overall theme of the card. Next is an oracle deck I got recently called Believe, and this is a very like positive affirmation deck. I really wanted to get a deck that I could use in tandem with a tarot deck. So I pull their tarot reading and then I would grab a little oracle card that gives them a nice positive affirmation to carry with them and kind of a mantra to hold on to. And on the front of these decks, it has some really cool minimalist art, and on the back there's a corresponding quote that kind of matches the theme of the front card. So I have a little push pin board next to my desk. I like to swap out a card every now and again that kind of keeps my attention focused the right way. Next is one of my all-time favorite oracle decks, the Sacred Self-Care deck. This is a very femme-focused deck, so it does have cards that are focused on like the womb and womanhood and those types of phrases, so this may not be for everybody, but there's a lot of just very simple, practical, down-to-earth self-care, like make yourself a nice meal, have a nice relaxing bath, go read a book, go on a vacation. But I find this very direct guidance in an oracle deck to be really refreshing and sometimes necessary for people that I read for. It gives a very solid focus. Like, yeah, what you're going to walk away from this from is you need to go get your paints, sit down and paint something new. Go cross your legs and meditate for a second. Next, we have the Stressless Oracle, which I use quite often. It's exactly what it sounds like. So on the back of the deck is the beautiful mandala artwork, and on the front is a pretty focused prompt on how you can stress less. This is a very root chakra deck. It's very practical, down to earth advice on what you can do to kind of help yourself rewire your brain a little bit and stress less. And here we have the very first oracle deck I ever bought, the Goddesses Tarot deck. I bought this at one of my local witchcraft shops. Again, I was attracted to this beautiful gradient kind of artwork. Every single card in this deck, I would love to have a print hanging on my wall of. Each of these cards represents a different goddess or goddess energy. Love working with feminine energy, of course. And on the back, it tells you which goddess it is and a nice little like lore dive on who they are. So this could be interesting flashcard educational moment too, but also tell you which goddess to work with. Next, we have the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck, which features a lot of angels and ancestors, could you guess? But it also includes a lot of animal and nature spirits, and this has a diverse cultural draw for its different cards. It has Celtic, Native American, Aboriginal, earth-based spiritualities to bring wisdom to you. There's a pretty good 50-50 split from human to non-human archetypes, and there's a summary sentence included on each card as well to give you a solid jumping point on how you're going to work with the energy of that card. One of the few decks that I have that features a lot of older people too, which is cool to see. Next, we have Mindful Messages, and this is pretty similar to the Gratitude deck or the Stress Less deck in that each card is a different affirmation or focus for you. I love the rainbow gradient feel, and when I pull one of these cards for someone that I'm reading for, it's again just a direct focus of like an affirmation they can repeat to themselves and hold on to. So again, this is great to use in collaboration with a traditional tarot deck, but could also be really good to just pull one in the morning and have a nice focus for the day. Next up is the Green Witch Oracle, which I think is just, I love the aesthetic of this whole deck, this kind of old weathered scroll. It features different plants and flowers and vegetables and fruits. It also includes on the cards the correspondences with their element and their planetary correspondence. So using this deck really helps me get grounded in with nature and attach the meaning to the fruits and flora of Mother Earth and learn a little bit more about the veggies and flowers. Next up is the Rumi Oracle, which, my gosh, so gorgeous and exactly what you would expect with the Rumi Oracle. It's based on the poet. The book that comes along with this is very thorough and in depth with what the cards mean, and they include a different Rumi poem for each one. The artwork is stunning. Another deck where I just wish I could have prints of every single card to hang on my walls. And these messages are very deep and spiritual and emotional, and I find trigger a lot of deep feelings with people, specifically with grief or spirits from beyond. Next, we have the Dreamers deck, which is a very cute aesthetic deck that again has a kind of affirmation feel to it. I was drawn immediately to the artwork. It's got the sepia tone that I'm really into lately. Each of these cards has a very minimalist art style to it that gives you a simple, short, positive affirmation to carry with you. This is again another deck that I like to pull a card and then carry it with me for the day or hang it on my wall. I'm gonna take risks. I'm dreaming bigger. This oracle deck is aesthetic, simple, and to the point. Next up is the Land Sky Oracle, and this is an oracle deck I picked up within the last year or so at a local new age shop to me. This deck has a major focus on yoga and actually explores the 8 limbs of yoga, using cows for the land or material world, owls for the sky and immaterial world. It also includes a lot of tools, crystals, aims, and obstacles that are inspired by mystical deities. There's a major focus on meditation and yogic practice in this oracle deck. The artwork is soft, pastel, and watercolored theme, and I just find very adorable. Next is the Spirit Animal Oracle, and I wish it was named anything but that, but this actually is a phenomenal deck though. The cardstock is excellent. It shuffles really well. The book is just long enough. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's full of such a good variety of animals. colors are gorgeous. We have the animal itself. Each card is numbered so you can quickly find it in the books, and it has a short sentence on each card to tell you what the card is focused around, so you don't necessarily have to reference the book. This is one of my favorite animal decks to work with because it just includes such a great variety and it's so easy to shuffle. The images are just gorgeous. Next is another one of the decks that the second I saw it, I had to have it. This is the Heavenly Bodies Astrology Oracle, and this is such a great study tool for people who are trying to get into astrology. Some of these decks I have feel like they turn into flashcards for me. The book that comes along with this is fully detailed, and the cards featured are all of the astrological bodies, so all of the planets. It has all of the astrology signs. It has the 4 elements, the North Node, South Node, and the different houses of astrology. So you can learn about astrology while you're using these cards. Or if you're already knowledgeable on astrology, this is obviously going to be a deck that you would love to have in your hands to use. If I remember correctly, this was pretty difficult to come by. I don't know if it's limited stock when they release them, but you might want to keep your eyes peeled and try to find it. Next up, we have the Dream Reading Oracle cards, and this deck features 2 different style of cards inside of it, actual dream symbols and then oracle messages. And the cards are marked plainly on the back so you know whether you're getting a dream symbol or an oracle card. I'm super big in dream interpretation and dream study, lucid dreaming. So of course I wanted to have this deck in my collection. It's pretty interesting, I will say, to do readings with. Next, we have the Divine Abundance Oracle cards, and this deck is one of my favorites to shuffle. So shuffleability is on point. It has a definite new age feel to it. So it talks a lot about like duality and divine love and meditative kind of things, but it also has like inner child work, and is another deck that includes a little snippet on it of what you need to focus on for the cards, but that's all you get. And there's no book included with this deck. So it's very intuitive based. Next up is part 1 of the Moonology Oracle cards. There are 2 different Moonology Oracle decks. The blue one is the first one that ever came out and remains my favorite of the 2 and one of my favorite Oracle decks. This deck features all of the different phases of the moon and corresponding astrology signs, like the full moon in Pisces, the cardinal moon, full moon in Gemini, fixed moon. And again, this has a summary sentence on the card, so you don't necessarily need the book with you. Artwork is gorgeous, and it's a great study tool for astrology beginners. The Moonology Manifestation was the second version of this deck that was released, and I do think that the artwork is better than the first one, but I actually like the first tarot deck better because I feel like, probably mostly because of the book. I prefer the artwork of this deck, but I find the book of the Moonology Manifestation deck to be pretty repetitive, and it starts to feel like every card means the same thing, even though the full moon in Scorpio is totally different from the new moon in Aries. So I think if you have an understanding of astrology, then this deck is going to be more useful than if you're only referencing the books. Next up is the Chakra Wisdom Oracle cards, and I have used this Oracle deck for a very long time. It was one of the first ones that I bought, and this was when I was first trying to learn more about the different chakra points. And this is by Tori Hartman, who actually has a YouTube channel, and there's 7 or 8 different cards for each chakra point. So you see it's a very rainbow focused deck, and the cards are very clear. You know, an orange one is going to be the sacral chakra, the blue is throat, etc. And each of the cards is basically a fable. It reminds me of Aesop's fables that the artist has written for each one. And the book gives you jumping points, keywords, it gives you the fable as well, so you can learn about the story behind it and the lore, and I find these to be excellent oracle cards. Next up, we have the Animal Spirit deck, not to be confused with the Spirit Animal deck from earlier. This is from the same people that did the Wild Unknown Tarot, but this is strictly an animal-focused deck, and I love this deck. I love working with animal and nature-themed cards in general, but the artwork is so gorgeous. It's this black and white style with gorgeous, bright, vibrant watercolor splashes, and it has mostly mundane, down-to-earth animals, the gazelle, the rabbit, the fish, but it also has a couple of mystical animals like the cosmic egg and a unicorn, and so it's got a little dose of magic in it. I think this deck and other animal decks are interesting to learn more about the symbolism of animals, especially if you maybe want to learn how to interpret dream symbols a little more. So that wraps up my tarot and oracle collection video. I hope y'all had a lot of fun looking at my tarot decks with me. Let me know if y'all have any questions about any of the decks in specific or other things like that. I have some video ideas that were suggested by some viewers in my Twitch chat. A special shout out to Distorted Reality. So I think I'm going to do some videos on like my top 5 favorite tarot decks or tarot decks I would recommend for beginners. But if y'all have any other questions that you'd like to see me address, let me know and I'll make some future videos. I'm really excited to be doing some more magical content on my channel. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I've been kind of trapped in the Twitch tutorial niche, as if y'all are longtime viewers, you're probably well aware of at this point. So now I'm just going to start segueing into lifestyle content, and I hope that you're excited to go on this journey with me. So thank you all so much for supporting me on my channel, and I hope you have a wonderful October, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.